Welcome to our channel. While Elon Musk is having federal workers to submit 5 things they have done on their job this past week, we thought it might be a good time to look at 5 things Trump's DOGE Committee has accomplished so far. Here are 5 savings initiatives by Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, this month, at the expense of 75,000 federal government employees. Let's see how much money they're aiming to save and where these cuts are happening. First up, we're heading straight into the belly of the beast, the Department of Defense, or as we like to call it, the place where money goes to disappear faster than common sense in a political debate. This month, the DOGE Committee, in all their infinite wisdom, have decided to grace the DoD with their presence and, wait for it, find some savings. And not just a few pennies tucked away in the couch cushions of the Pentagon, we're talking a whopping $80 million. Now I know what you're thinking. $80 million. In the grand scheme of the DoD's budget, that's like finding a nickel in a dumpster fire. And you'd be absolutely right. But hey, who are we to scoff at a nickel, especially when it comes with a healthy dose of bureaucratic absurdity? So, where exactly are these savings coming from? Well, according to DoD spokesperson and walking-talking Ken doll Sean Parnell, they've identified some wasteful spending within the department, and by wasteful spending they apparently mean things like, get this, $2 million on DEI training, you know, those pesky programs that try to make sure everyone feels welcome and respected in the workplace. Can't imagine why we'd need those. And if you thought that was ridiculous, hold on to your hats because it gets better. Another victim of the DOGE Committee's ruthless efficiency crusade is the Defense Human Resources Activity, which is apparently being relieved of a whopping $3.5 million, because who needs efficient human resources in the military, am I right? But wait, there's more. The DOGE Committee, in their infinite wisdom, have also decided to take aim at some very specific programs. And by specific, I mean things like the procurement of a new type of coffee maker for the Pentagon break room, and the annual budget for decorative office plants. Okay, I might have made that last part up, but honestly, would it surprise you at this point? Next on our whirlwind tour of government efficiency, we arrive at the Social Security Administration, or SSA, the agency responsible for making sure millions of Americans receive their well-deserved retirement benefits. Now, you might think that an agency tasked with such a crucial responsibility would be treated with a certain level of respect, even reverence. But this is the Trump administration we're talking about, so naturally they've decided to send in the DOGE Committee with one simple mission: cut, cut, cut. And cut they did. This month, the SSA announced a proposed $800 million reduction in their budget for fiscal year 2025. Now before you start panicking about grandma's social security checks bouncing, let's take a closer look at where these cuts are actually happening. According to SSA Acting Commissioner and resident cheerful executioner Lee Dudek, the bulk of the savings will come from streamlining operations and reducing administrative costs. And by streamlining operations, they apparently mean things like slashing payroll, information technology, and even property. Because who needs a functioning IT system or, a roof over their heads when you're trying to process millions of retirement claims? But wait, there's more. The DOGE Committee, in their infinite wisdom, have also decided to target grants, those pesky little programs that help vulnerable populations access essential services. Because what's the point of having a safety net if you're not willing to let people fall through the cracks every now and then? And to add insult to injury, all of this is happening against the backdrop of a shrinking workforce. That's right, the SSA has already been downsized from 57,000 to about 50,000 employees, and with these new cuts one can only imagine how many more dedicated public servants will be shown the door, but hey, at least they're saving money, right? Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're about to enter the thrilling world of government real estate. That's right, it's time to talk about the General Services Administration, or GSA, the agency responsible for managing all those federal buildings you never really think about. But while you might not be losing sleep over the GSA, the DOGE Committee sure has been, and they've come up with a plan to whip this agency into shape, one vacant lease at a time. This month, the GSA announced a plan to save over $100 million in annual rent by canceling more than 250 vacant or underutilized leases. That's right, the government has apparently been holding on to a whole lot of empty office space, and the DOGE Committee is finally doing something about it. Now, on the surface, this might seem like a perfectly reasonable idea. After all, who needs to be paying rent on buildings that are just sitting empty? But as with all things DOGE related, the devil is in the details, or in this case, the list of specific lease cancellations. Because it turns out not all of these vacant properties are just dusty old storage rooms, filled with forgotten filing cabinets. Some of them, and I'm not making this up, are actually quite important. Like, for example, that wildlife refuge visitor center that's been closed for the past year because, you guessed it, budget cuts. Or that rural health clinic that's been struggling to stay afloat due to, say it with me now, budget cuts. But hey, at least we're saving money on rent, right? Who cares if it comes at the expense of essential services and environmental protection? Fasten your seatbelts because we're about to enter the dizzying world of government IT. That's right, it's time to talk about the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, the agency responsible for, well, managing personnel. But more importantly for our purposes, the OPM also handles a sizable chunk of the government's IT budget, a budget that the DOGE Committee has decided to target with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. This month, the OPM announced a proposed $296 million reduction in their IT budget for fiscal year 2025. That's right, they're slashing a whopping 80% of their $370 million budget, a move that has left many experts scratching their heads and wondering if anyone in the DOGE Committee has ever actually used a computer. Because let's be real for a second, government IT is already about as efficient and user-friendly as a donkey trying to operate a rotary phone. And now, thanks to the DOGE Committee's cost-saving measures, it's about to get a whole lot worse. So, what exactly are they cutting? Well, according to the DOGE Committee's very detailed and not at all vague report, they're planning to streamline systems and reduce redundancies. And by streamline systems, they apparently mean things like getting rid of those pesky security updates that slow down your computer. And by reduce redundancies, they mean firing everyone who knows how to fix a printer jam. But hey, at least they're saving money, right? Who cares if it means government websites will be running on Windows 95 and every email will be sent in triplicate because no one knows how to use the reply all button? And finally, we arrive at our last stop on this magical journey of government efficiency, the Department of Education. Now, you might think that an agency tasked with, educating the future generations of Americans would be considered somewhat important. But this is the Trump administration we're talking about, so naturally they've decided to treat the Department of Education like an annoying house guest they're trying to politely, or not so politely, get rid of. This month, the DOGE Committee set their sights on the Department of Education with a singular laser-focused goal: downsize it to the legal minimum. Because who needs a fully functioning Department of Education when you can just transfer all that responsibility back to the states, right? Now, to be fair, the DOGE Committee hasn't actually released any specific details about how much money they're planning to save by gutting the Department of Education. But let's be real, they're not exactly known for their transparency, are they? But what we do know, thanks to the investigative reporting of The Guardian, because apparently they're the only ones still paying attention to the Department of Education, is that this move is all part of the Trump administration's grand plan to dismantle public education as we know it. Because why bother investing in things like qualified teachers, updated textbooks, and well-maintained facilities when you can just funnel all that money into tax cuts for the wealthy and subsidies for failing industries? It's not like the future of our country depends on an educated populace or anything. And there you have it, folks. The top 5 savings initiatives brought to you by the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, or as we've come to know and fear it, DOGE. While these proposed savings might seem significant at first glance, it's important to remember that the DOGE Committee isn't exactly known for their rigorous fact-checking or, their grasp on reality. So before we all start celebrating the imminent shrinking of the federal government, it's probably a good idea to wait for some independent verification of these figures. Because as we've learned time and time again, when it comes to the Trump administration, things are rarely as they seem. And what starts as a noble quest for efficiency often ends up being a thinly veiled excuse to gut essential services, reward wealthy donors, and undermine the very foundations of our democracy. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates.